Hello, all, and welcome to the Movie Bears podcast. I'm Brad Harris, and along with my fellow co hosts, we like to review films either current or classic on this show with the lovable bear twist. That, of course, being us. We are going to be reviewing not one, but two films on this week's episode of the Movie Bears podcast. We are going to be talking Uncharted, the new Sony game based film, as well as Death on the Nile, once an once an Agatha Christie novel, now made into a new film. So we got a lot to talk about on the show this week. Let me introduce my co-hosts before I flub my words anymore. Jim Pugliafico is with us in the virtual studio. Hey, babe.
Hey, babe. I am. Thanks, and I'm glad to be here. We got two pretty new movies to talk about. One brand new, and one about a week old. So that is still in theaters. So I'm excited to talk about both of these with you guys.
All right. Excellent. Glad to hear you are excited. I know someone else who's probably excited. That, of course, is Will Lindis. Hey, Will.
Hey, Brad. Hey, Jim. Hey, viewers and listeners. Yeah, this one's going to be exciting. We were thinking about what the unofficial theme for this episode might be, and both films feature boats. Not a spoiler. We see it in the trailers. One of them is literally set on the Nile. So this is our ship episode. We're shipping this one. So yeah, that's what it is. Maybe we'll even talk about Titanic. I don't know.
If it's maybe the Owl Kitty Titanic video. Have you seen that, Will?
Oh, I have not.
Oh, yeah. You're going to have to look it up. This very creative person inserts a cat into Titanic, and it's like a faux trailer. It's probably the funniest thing I've seen all year.
It's like amazing. A minute long.
Yeah, it's really good.
I cannot wait to see whatever they did to make the cat balance on the floating door, like whatever that scene looks like. There's a lot of ways to make that fun, so I'm excited. Bring it on.
Oh goodness! Well, hope you enjoy it. You'll have to report back and let us know what you think.
We love our nautical themed movies on this show, right? We might even, who knows what? We might even get into singing a sea shanty later.
I won't be, but if you want to,
okay. Well,
sing.
It's all the rage. It's all the rage on TikTok.
I don't know any sea shanties.
I mean, you're right. There's the one that was like in every TikTok for about 3 weeks there, but
yeah.
I mean, Jim, do you have any like sea shanties just that like cocked and loaded? Like, are you like ready to go with the sea shanty? Do you have one?
I am not.
Okay.
I am not. To be honest,
I'm
sorry. I'm unprepared.
No, that's fine. Like I'm unprepared there too. I just, from the way you set that up, part of me was just wondering, does Jim just like walk around with like an encyclopedic knowledge of sea shanties? So thank you for dispelling me of that.
What a wonderful thing that would be to have, right?
Yeah.
He's preparing to cosplay one of the characters from the Lighthouse movie we saw.
Oh, there you go. Just wear your beans.
Yeah. Spill the beans.
Where are your beans, Jim?
All right. Well, we got a big movie to discuss, and then another big movie to discuss right after that. But before we get to either of those films, we just want to give you a quick heads up on a couple of things. South by Southwest Film is coming up here in just a couple of weeks. Kicks off on March 11th, I believe, running through the 20th or the 21st. Lots of great films. Will is going to be there in person in Austin for some of the films. Jim and myself will be doing the film festival from home. Whole lot to see. Whole lot of goodness normally comes out of South by. We are really, really excited to be in a position to be able to screen so many, no doubt, wonderful films here coming up. If you are going to South by Southwest Film, again, in Austin, you might see Will around. Will, I know you're planning to be at least a few of the big headliner movies. What are you most excited to see?
So there are two films that are immediately at the top of my list. The headliner opening film, Everything Everywhere All at Once, the new film by the Daniels. They did Swiss Army Man starring Michelle Yeoh. It looks fucking wild, and I'm so excited for it. And then there is a documentary that I'd seen a scene from like a couple of years ago, created by and about Kishibashi, who is one of my absolute favorite musicians. And I was elated to see that not only is this thing that I saw him like preview a scene of at a concert a few years ago, like now a finished film, but also that it's premiering at South by Southwest. So I'm over the moon to get to see both of those films.
Yeah, as always, man. Just looking at the lineup this year, there's just so much that I can't wait to watch. Thankfully, like we said, the festival this year is going to be IRL and URL. IRL for in real life, and URL virtual, which is kind of awesome. We're going to be able to get to see a lot of the films. One of the headliners that really stuck out for me was a new Linklater film, which is always an event, especially in Texas and in Austin.
Yes.
It's going to be awesome. It's called Apollo 10 and a half, and it's set in 1969 during the, when we landed on the moon, probably from a child's eyes. I don't know. Jack Black is in it. I saw. It could be fantastic. So, Will, I don't know if I'll get to see that one from home, but you're going to have to experience it for all three of us, if not.
Boots on the ground, reporting in. Yeah, no, I'm excited to see as much as I can. And like you mentioned, Brad, if any of our listeners, either watching live right now or listening to this anytime between now and the festival, is going to be attending either in person or virtual, let us know. I could always grab a coffee with you in between movies and help me like parse through whatever it was I just saw. Or if it's virtual, like we like just sort of chatting about, what did you just see? Was that good? What did you think about that? What's up next? So yeah, if you're going to be a part of this festival one way or the other, let us know. Join our conversation.
Indeed. Be on the lookout. One more thing for you to be on the lookout for. Our very own Will Indus is going to be on the Comic Book Bears podcast this Thursday, relative to when we're recording. That will be Thursday, February 24th, the day before my birthday. So, Will, that will help me remember. But be sure to check Will out on the Comic Book Bears podcast. They have a phenomenal show. They're going to be talking all things comics. You don't want to miss it. And hey, we've got the movie Mistrial folks with us. Hello there. Gentlemen.
Hello.
How's it going? Movie Mistrial asks. It's going very well.
It's going.
Yep.
We're going to get into it. Yep.
It's going. Things are good. Things are moving. And hey, any night that I get to talk about two interesting, at least, movies with my two favorite people to talk about movies with is a good night by me. So yeah, it's going great.
I agree. It's always a pleasure when we can get together and chat like this, both amongst ourselves, but also with our listeners who are joining us live. If that's you, welcome. Hunker down, settle in. We've got some great conversation hopefully coming up for you. If you're listening through the magic of digital tape delay in Apple Podcasts, Spotify, etc., we love you just as much. And though you can't be part of the show live, you can always tweet us at MB Podcast or find us on Facebook. Just look for Movie Bears Podcast. Tell us what you think of the movies we talk about in whatever episode you listen into, and we'd love to discourse with you. That said, guys, we got two films. We better get this thing on the road. We're going to start with Uncharted. Are you guys ready to do some hardcore adventuring?
Yeah, ready for adventure.
Let's go around the world.
All right. For those of you who are unfamiliar with the format of our show, we typically talk about a film spoiler-free for about 10 to 15 minutes before we open up the wider world of spoilers, and we give ample fair warning before we do that. So if you haven't seen Uncharted yet, and you're like, I'm kind of on the fence, I wonder what you guys think, A, thank you. We're honored. But B, you can listen to our initial thoughts spoiler-free and then kind of duck out when you need to if spoilers are a concern. So all of that said, here we go. Our discussion of Uncharted. All right. So, Will, I know that like me, you are kind of a gamer, maybe a casual gamer compared to super, super hardcore gamers. Where do you fall on that line, Will?
Well, I guess it really depends, to be honest. Like, there are types of gamers who are like like us, who sample so many different games that they can have an encyclopedic knowledge of anything that's coming out and can sample all of the different things that are happening in real time. That is not me. I'm the type of person who, I play a lot of video games, but I also tend to hyper fixate on one or two at a time, and so I miss a lot of what's happening out there, but I spend a lot of hours on the ones that are currently keeping me entertained.
Yep, you sound a lot like me. I'm currently fixated on another Sony exclusive. Horizon Forbidden West is my life right now, and it's amazing. It's magical. But I did recently play the first Uncharted game. So, Will, I was wondering, have you played them at all?
No, interestingly enough, I own the first three, but haven't played any. They came as
Uh-huh.
like a bundle on when I bought my PlayStation 4. It was like the Uncharted package, but I just never got around to playing them. I when I got that, I got Fallout 4 with my PlayStation
Mm.
4, and I was just like, sorry, Nathan Drake, I'm going to be playing you, and just never got back around to it. So, um,
Well,
you
as
might be the Uncharted expert here.
I don't know if I'm an expert, but I'll certainly share some thoughts. But as such a big film buff and a video game fan, Will, you seem the perfect one to kick off this discussion for us, if you don't mind. Give us just a brief setup on what this movie is and what did you think? Was it good? Is it worth skipping? Where do you come down?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think you set the table perfectly for this one. This is Uncharted is based off of the wildly popular Sony video game franchise. It's about this guy named Nathan Drake, played here by Tom Holland. You remember Tom Holland, Spider-Man himself.
Oh, the
Um,
Spider-Man
the
guy.
Thwip,
Spider-Man.
thwip,
It's
thwip.
kind of
One
weird
of the
seeing him in a
Spider-Man guys.
kind of weird seeing him in a Sony property. Kind of weird that anyway. So we've got this Nathan Drake guy, and he's known for being sort of like street smart, and this guy who's a bit of a I don't want to say scoundrel, but is able to kind of get by on his scrappy wit. He teams up with this guy named Sully, who's played by Mark Wahlberg, because the two of them have found out about the secret treasure of Ferdinand Magellan, the explorer, and his men, which was lost hundreds of years ago. And so the two of them go on a globe spanning adventure filled with adventure, action sequences, puzzles, deceit, and all sorts of different types of things that you'd expect from this genre on the hunt for this treasure. And so I know that the games are very popular from a perspective of, like, I always see them as very Tomb Raider adjacent, just sort of like in what shelf they fit in on where they fit on the shelf. But having not played the games themselves, I only know about it from a distance, right? I know kind of that Nathan Drake is supposed to be this adventurer guy. I think that if I didn't know this was based off of a video game, I would have thought that this was a kind of a straight down the middle, not really good, but not really bad, just sort of generic action flick. And I don't think that is a ringing endorsement at all. There's probably some fans of this series who are going to say, no, 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 they absolutely nailed Nathan Drake, or no, 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 they got it way wrong. I can't talk to that. I cannot speak to that. What I can speak to is I feel like I've seen a variation of this movie a billion times before. It felt very generic. And if I were coming at this from the other perspective, if I were watching this and then found out that there was a popular game series after it, I don't know that I would be inspired to immediately pick up those games. I would just go, yeah, that was fine. This is like San Andreas. Like, it wasn't an offensive movie for me, but it's, in a month you'll bring up to me that I watched Uncharted, and I'll go like, oh yeah, I guess I did. For what it's worth, the action sequences were kind of cool in spots. There's one that's very heavily focused in the trailers where there's some stuff happening in the air. Pretty cool stuff. There's some stuff that happens, with some puzzles that I thought was pretty cool. Some of the special effects work, some of them less so. But I think what didn't work for me overall was just the overall arc of the story and the characters, which I'm not trying to overthink it at all or anything, but I felt like I had a problem really differentiating a lot of the motives of all of the characters. They all felt a little carbon copy of um, I'm after this treasure, and also you don't know if you can trust me. Copied 12 times again across 12 different actors, and then that's the cast. So I don't know. In terms of is this or is this not a recommend? It's fine. It's perfectly fine for what it is. I wouldn't necessarily like go out of my way to see this one, but I think that it delivers at least the bare minimum of what it's looking for. It is a fun time at the theaters, and it's probably looks good on the big screen, but aside from that, I can't really give it a ringing endorsement. Maybe just a passing one. So yeah, this is the C- of movies.
So sort of a soft-ish.
I feel
maybe
attacked,
recommend.
Will. I feel attacked. This is how I got through high school.
Hey, there is nothing wrong with the C-. You're just not going to get this movie is perfectly fine. It passes, it gets the cap. It just doesn't get to go to the pizza party at the end of the semester.
Nah.
Nor does it get to go to Georgetown. So there you go, Tom Holland.
There you go.
Congratulations. All right. Well, thanks so much for sharing your thoughts. Jim, you are not a video game person outside of some Rock Band fun times, and maybe a little Myst sprinkled in here or there.
Mm-hmm.
But Jim, what did you think of this as a movie, if not a video game franchise that you're plugged into?
Yeah, right. I mean, so I can't, kind of even more so than Will, I can't evaluate this on the scale of a quote unquote video game movie. Going back now, knowing that it was based on a video game property, I can see kind of the structure of the movie in a way mimics video games in that you get some scenes of like character interactions and dialogue that are like what I guess gamers would call cutscene, right? And then boom, we're into an action sequence, right? Where it's more gamey, like things are happening and characters are moving and solving puzzles and that kind of stuff. And then bang, you're right into another character scene. Unfortunately, none of it very interesting. Well, you said was very generic. I agree with you. This is like super generic. I think the actors in this are fine with what they do. They're playing certain characters. There's not a lot to do. And God, I don't know if there's any even way to spoil this movie other than to say, there's the action sequences were fine, except what I found a little bit more annoying was that in the middle of every single action sequence, there was at least one instance of one of the characters kind of breaking the scene with some quip or wisecrack to either a villain character or between the two of them about how much they don't trust each other. And it's annoying. It was kind of the same thing I don't really like in some comic book movies where they kind of do that thing. The action sequences were kind of, some of them, like you said, were kind of cool. But as soon as they got to that, my life's in danger. I might get my head chopped off in this scene, but I'm going to like joke about something like that's just off the top of my head. Totally like rips you right out of any sense of, immersion, I guess, in the scene. So I can't recommend this movie on that. I found it just too generic, a little boring, a little predictable. The star power between Holland and Wahlberg is fine, but just didn't really give them enough to do in this movie, if you ask me, other than be characters that you could kind of jump from plot point to plot point to plot point. And it was a little tiring. And the movies, I was told the movie's like 2.5 hours. I don't know if it is or not in actuality, but yeah, I just can't give it. I barely am not able to give this movie a recommendation. As again, I can't come at it from a gamer's perspective, but from a movie guy's perspective, I would say no.
All right. So Jim, this is definitely a pass.
Yeah.
Or rather pass on the movie rather than the movie gets a
Right.
pass.
Right.
Yeah.
The movie did not pass with a C-. It's more like a D.
All right. Well, thank you so much for
A D
sharing your
plus.
thoughts. A
D
D
plus.
plus. All
D
right.
plus.
Locking your final grade there, Professor Pugliafico.
And look, a D is fine. Some people really like the D. So it's like, if
That's
that's
right.
what you're giving for the grade, maybe it's for some people, but just not for Jim.
There's a whole movie about the lost city of D that's coming out. So I mean, it's a lot of people do like it.
There's a lot of like services that have a plus in them now. I want to subscribe to D plus. I wonder
D
what that
plus.
would come with.
Yeah. I mean,
Yeah.
we know what it would come with.
All right, we've got we've got a comment here from Johannes from the Movie Mistrial podcast. He says the plot of this movie is super convenient on multiple occasions. The beginning, flashback to the beginning, is a trope that's tired. The villains were terrible, etc., etc. None of this is really a spoiler because all of it's featured in the trailer. Johannes, I have a feeling some of the things that you just said might come up in our spoiler discussion. So we're gonna put a pin on that for now and flash back to that when we get into spoilers. I think I feel probably similarly to the both of you. Rather than come at this from a movie perspective, since I have played the game, I'm going to come at it from that angle.
You're either on the D or you're not. You're either on the D or you're not.
I just want to preface, I've only played the first game, so I haven't played any of the others that have come out. And I played it recently through the lens of like modern video gaming, having just played the amazing Ghost of Tsushima. I put over 100 hours into that game, and I was raring for something else to play because I had a game hole that I needed filled. And I was looking for something, and I had bought that same collection that you got with your PlayStation, Will, from Sony for like $7.99 one time when it was on sale. I was like, what? 3 games for $8? You can't beat that. But I hadn't really played it. And with the movie coming out, I thought, well, all right, I'm going to go through this game as we get close to the film just so I can kind of compare. I'm going to tell you what, guys, compared to the game that I played, this movie is an A fucking plus. Let me just say that. Yeah. So the game follows a similar formula to the film. There's some MacGuffin treasure out there that they got to find. There's usually multiple legs traveling through the world, finding clues, solving puzzles, unlocking things with the MacGuffin or MacGuffins, and then, quippy fun times at the end. The problem with the game is that all that fun stuff that we had in the movie is broken up by about 45 minutes of shooting gallery action. So, whereas in the film, we might see the characters, talking at one location, and then boom, they're on to the next thing. They're finding the MacGuffin. They're doing all these, cool scavenger hunt things. Everything stops so that you can just travel through a stupid map and shoot at things for 45 minutes with enemies that just endlessly spawn. And once you're done with those, even more appear. And when
This
those
is the
are
Uncharted
done,
game?
this is the Uncharted game. Yeah, if you look this up, there are so many people who complain about this. I went to Reddit, as I often do, because I wanted to know, like, okay, first game played, are the future games like that? Because if so, I don't want to play them. And so many people on social media were like, that is the Uncharted games. They get a little bit better. They find some clever ways to like hook you and keep you a little more engaged. But for the most part, it's like endless shooting galleries. It's a shooting game. Whereas Tomb Raider, Will, you mentioned that, much, much more focused. Yeah, there's some shooting and combat, but it's much more focused on the exploration and the puzzles. And I think that's kind of what I was expected going into the game. Coming into the movie, I was just like, my God, how many long ass gunfight scenes am I going to have to sit through for this to be true to the game? Is this really what they're going to do? And I was so happy, guys, let me tell you, so happy that the action sequences we had, yes, there were gunfights, they're in the trailer, it's no secret. yes, they happened aplenty, but they were usually short, quick, with a purpose, and not super gratuitous. So I felt like Holland and Wahlberg were fine here. Do I think this is the best movie of the year? Oh my God, absolutely not. But at least compared to the game, I had a much more fun time with the film. And I'll be honest, like I would, if I were wanting to consume more Uncharted content, I would ask for another movie and not play another one of the games. That's just my feeling.
Good for the movie, not so good for the game.
Yeah, that's a really interesting angle on it too. Maybe I should. It sounds like Jim and I might have had a better experience had we played the game first. So we should, let this be a lesson, everyone. Play more video games.
Yeah, there you go. There you go.
Like tomorrow at work, if you have a couple of hours free and a meeting that you can alt tab out of, play a video game instead of listening to whatever Sally's talking about with the latest projections for the quarter. And if anyone says anything, just tell them the movie bear said it was okay.
There you go. You're covered. You're covered. Well, guys, I want to leave us plenty of time because I know we have another movie to talk about as well, but we want to have a girthy spoiler section. So if it's okay with you fellas, I'm going to go ahead and move us along. Spoilers for Uncharted, starring Tom Holland and Mark Wahlberg, are about to be fair game. If you continue to listen, you do so at your own peril. If you value your innocence where the plot of the film is concerned, now is your time to step away for 15 minutes and 22 seconds. Come on back for our discussion of Death on the Nile. But spoilers are 100% good to go. Where do you guys want to start?
I just want to start by saying that the things that happen in this movie make a movie that was so quote unquote dumb and ridiculous, like in Moonfall, it makes Moonfall look like a freaking National Geographic documentary. Like some of the shit that they do in this movie, and some of it's in the trailer, you can see it, but like hoisting those ships by helicopter out of a hole in the ground that for some reason have never been discovered for 500 years on this island. It's wacky. I mean, and maybe that's because video games, I don't know how much of a fantasy the video game is or how much of it is based in reality. The movie wants us to the movie itself, forget the game, wants us to kind of think of a Ferdinand Magellan and this historic treasure and blah, 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 blah. And then they throw on top of that, two people on a fucking free falling car through the sky having a fucking conversation with each other while they're plummeting down off of an airplane. It's just insane stuff.
I will say, I guess in defense of that, softest defense possible, I think that some of that is also just part of the adventure genre, as it is, not just from a video game perspective, but even from a film perspective. I think of something like Indiana Jones is probably a big precursor. This is a guy who I think Harrison Ford delivers, quips in a very different way. I think in the terms of Indiana Jones, he uses a lot more of that kind of cocky, bravado and swagger he brings to it. But I think that same DNA is here, right? Globe trotting. You've got these over the top weird discoveries and stuff that you just have to sort of go along with. I think the biggest difference is less what they do and more, I think, with the film like Indiana Jones, you're more want to just sort of suspend your disbelief and go along with it because the character is so damn engaging, and the worlds have this sort of despite some of the more questionable versions of what I'm about to say, there's sort of a mystery and a mysticism to sort of the exotic locales they go to, which I'm glad they're steering away from for obvious reasons. But at the same time, the locales that they did visit felt very stripped of where they were. When they go to the Philippines, I didn't feel like we were in the Philippines. I thought we were just in an island. When we were in the sewers beneath
Barcelona.
Barcelona. Yeah.
Barcelona.
you got to see a little bit of like modern Barcelona life, but at the same time, like it didn't feel like I got to see I got to see a set piece, but I didn't feel like it was like that locale that I was going to in the same way. And I don't know what the difference is there, but because of that, I wasn't brought along for the journey. And you're right, because of that, then the quips and the kind of the moments of levity that they're supposed to do don't break up any tension, because the tension isn't really there for me to begin with.
Right. But like some of the stuff like that, at the beginning of the movie, the Sully character, Mark Wahlberg, kind of plans to steal an antiquity, which is a golden cross, which is a key, right, from some fancy auction house. And there's just no real ingenuity to that actual set piece. I mean, one guy creates a diversion, I'll just go steal the thing. And my master stroke of stealing it is to put on, a security guard's coat, and I'll just ask another security guard to give me this fucking multi-million-dollar piece of antique gold, and I'll just walk out the door with it.
Listen. Do you know how fucking gullible 90% of people really are if you dress the part? If you look like you belong there?
I don't know, man. Look, if your job was to guard this thing, right, and you were told you don't hand it to anybody until we get it to this location and it's safe, and some other dude comes up to you who looks like you and says, "Oh, you know what? Just give me the thing. I'll take it." You're going to be like, "Wait, I need to talk to somebody first," right? I mean, at least. You really have to suspend your disbelief for a lot of the stuff in here, and which is fine. That's kind of the movie that it is. But a lot of that stuff just, I'm like, because at the beginning of the movie, it sets up these two characters as very, very clever, like, sneaky and sleight of hand kind of people. And then they have such a clumsy scene like that. And I'm like, oh boy, what are we in for here?
Wait a second. Wait. You're telling me that you set aside your disbelief that space can be folded and punctured and traveled instantly to a spice-filled world where Paul Atreides has spaceships and shield fights, but you can't set aside your disbelief that, like, Mark Wahlberg in a suede jacket could be like, "Hey, give me the MacGuffin," and they give it to him?
Yeah, it's a little bit too far.
Okay. I just wanted to clarify.
What if I were to say that in this exact case, that I think that you are both absolutely correct? Because I agree with Brad in that, like, I think the plan is absolutely something like, could you see something like this happening? Plus or minus like the actual like auction, the stakes and stuff like that. But the, people looking the part to put on that air of like trustworthiness that people get lulled into. Absolutely. But at the same time, from a movie perspective, I think what really works about heists like this is more when I think it needed like 1 degree more of like complication to make it more like interesting from a film perspective. Like you think about the Ocean's movies, right? And maybe they do too much of it, right? Like, oh, but it was secretly here, but did you know it was actually here all along? But I double crossed you and triple crossed you. Maybe none of that, right? But I do think that what would have been really cool is if they had done something where we found out that wasn't the actual plan. There was another way that he used to get it out.
Or that he ended up with the wrong thing. You know what I mean? And somebody else had the real one and like outsmarted him or something. And, because there were some villains and some other characters in this movie that I thought were just as interesting, if not more interesting, than the two main characters. I did like Antonio Banderas's villain. I always like him on screen anyway. He could just recite the phone book, and like you kind of like that guy, right? I mean, he was just a good snarling, what is the word I'm looking for? Like he's scrupulous villain, right? Unscrupulous villain. He was good. There was a couple other villains, side characters that I didn't really like. Although I liked the one, what was her name? Chloe? Was her name Chloe in the movie?
Yeah, Chloe.
Chloe. I did like the actress, and I liked the character because she was kind of like a was she wasn't she character to kind of muddy the waters a little bit. Like, is she helping us out, or is she really just gonna like double triple cross us at the end? So I did like the chaos that her character brought to the story. But other than that, yeah, there was just too much stuff that like brought me out of the movie. Like when they discovered those ships down in that thing, I'm like, the fucking thing is open from above. You can't tell me that somebody would see a sinkhole that big from the sky and not
It's
explore
covered in
it.
it's covered in trees.
Whatever. Yeah. Okay. You're right. It was covered in trees. Nobody could see that. No one could see that.
You do have to take a little bit of it with a grain of salt, because there was a moment right before that I had the same sort of like argument with myself about. There's a part where the secret cave that you had to get into, like where everything was just like sort of like a jet ski around like the corner type thing. And I thought, well, how has no one just discovered this? And I thought, well, you know what? Like, because in this world they haven't, and it would be, I think, I mean, if the end result of the movie was like they get there and it was already gone because like Elon Musk already saw it by like perusing through like Google Earth photographs, and they got there and all that was left was just like a Tesla and a note that says "See you, suckers." Like that would have been a less fulfilling adventure movie. So for me, it was sort of like when I had those thoughts, I had to like remember like that's not why you come to these movies. You don't come to them to sort of like say how would this work in our world. We have to say what fun can be had in their world. But I mean, also to your point, Jim, like I think if we have to do a ton of the heavy lifting for the movie to convince ourselves of that, instead of letting us be washed away in this fantasy, there is still something that the movie failed to do along the way.
Yeah.
Right.
I will say, compared to the video game, they were very faithful in bringing a lot of things in, and that moment was one of them, Jim. Without spoiling the game, there are moments where like the enemy is racing against you to reach the MacGuffin to find the thing you need to get to the treasure, and they would often get there first, and Nathan Drake would have to like speedboat his way to another part of the island to make his own approach, or find another way in. And so when that happened in the film, I'm like, oh yeah, this is like directly from the game. Of course he would like speedboat around the channel and find the real way in. There were some other things too. Will, you mentioned the action scene at the beginning of the movie. Johannes mentioned too in media res that the movie starts with that scene, the boxes coming out of the plane and the car and all that, and then it flashes back to present day, and then we catch up to that moment. The climbing sequences were like straight out lifted from the game. Like each time he reaches a new box, I was expecting to see a prompt on the screen that said press triangle, to jump. And he moved from box to box, and there was a fight on a couple of the boxes that happened, and I'm like, yep, straight from the game. When he's scaling the side of the ships and like jumping around and grabbing ropes and swinging around, I'm like, yeah, this is right out of the video game. So
that makes sense.
It felt very was it a quick time event? It felt very quick time eventy.
Definitely. So I would be interested to hear from someone who is a major Uncharted fan what they thought about the movie. I have not gone on Reddit yet because we just saw the movie last night. And did I mention Horizon Forbidden West consuming my life?
You did.
But I should check it out. I should do a little research and see what people thought. But we've got another comment from Johannes. He says, I find it hard to believe that A, nobody has found these ships in a cave with an opening. Jim, you were talking about that. And B, these ships have survived the tropical climate for that
500 years or whatever it was. Yeah.
Would have been a fun scene in this movie for me. And again, this is just the I love swimming in chaos part of my brain. I would have been great if they had attached all the cables, and as they bring the ship up,
The
it
ship
just
just
collapses into fucking dust. Because it's like, oh well, we didn't think that through. But again, it wouldn't be this type of movie, right? You know?
Right.
Yeah. Mhm.
Again, you've got to suspend your disbeliefs for something like this. I mean, you do the same thing with Indiana Jones. Like,
Moonfall. Yeah.
oh, Indy just happens to be in this temple that just happens to have 1,000 snakes here, that just happens to have, like,
Exactly.
you gotta put on your indie hat when you go into films like this and kind of know what you're expecting.
He survived a nuke in a refrigerator. Come on,
Right? Come
I mean,
on.
no, that movie didn't happen. No, and it's like I think that there is a certain valid way of looking at an action adventure movie. Of the setup is only nominally important. What's important is like the payoff, right? And I think the payoff is okay. We want to have an aerial pirate fight with cannons and people swinging by ropes on these ancient ships being held aloft by helicopters. Cool. Now, how do we work our way towards that? And I'm sure that's how it worked. I'm sure they didn't like say, okay, it's in a cave. What happens next? They worked their way backwards from that, and that's fine. That's the type of movie this is.
Yeah. Well, we'll get to see it in the next movie too. We got Euron Greyjoy representing some kind of Third Reich, some kind of character at the end in the stinger of this movie. Will, did you see the stinger?
I did see the stinger, and I thought, bold move, Cotton. This was a lot of stinger and a lot of setup. Like, we give the superhero movies like a hard time for it. I feel like this one really was just like, hey, let's just put a scene from the next movie.
We'll push the next adventure right
well,
now.
It's funny because the movie spends so much time being the genesis of the relationship, right, between Drake and Sully, and setting everything up, and it's their first adventure together. The stinger is really like they're seasoned with each other now, and they've got a repartee, and the whole thing with Mr. Whiskers being in his backpack, I laughed so hard at that. That was amazing.
Yeah.
I go everywhere with Mr. Whiskers. But I found myself wishing we had gotten more of that. Like, it did intrigue me for the next movie. Gross, creepy mustache aside on Mark Wahlberg. I'm kind of excited to see that version of these characters. So I know this wasn't the most fantastic movie ever, but I had fun with it, and I appreciate that.
Yeah, it was, like I said, it got a passing grade for me, right? Like, it did it kind of go in one eye and out the other a little bit? Sure. But we've seen some shit, right? We've seen some bad stuff. This wasn't that, this was limp, but it wasn't bad. And something like that, like, leads me to believe that there is a path where in a subsequent film of this, they can take the stuff that works and sort of hammer out the stuff that doesn't. Like, this is a very malleable, workable product for a subsequent film. So yeah, to your point, Brad, I'm on board for a second one. Just sort of with the caveat of, I really hope they kind of learn the right lessons.
Yeah, it's just wash, rinse, repeat. You basically can tell the same story over and over again with the same two characters, just a different treasure.
One last thing I wanted to talk about, and then I know we've got to get to our next movie. They sure went out of the way to show Tom Holland without his clothes on in this film. And when he did have his clothes on, he was wearing white t-shirts that soon got wet, and you could see right through them. I'm used to looking at Tom Holland as like a 15-year-old Spider-Man. I was really uncomfortable seeing him so sexified up. I know in this movie, he's a young man in his 20s or whatever, but I was just like, that is a high schooler. Gross.
Well, if it helps, spoilers for No Way Home, he's graduated from high school by the end of that movie. So you can just sort of think of it as this is college age Peter doing himbo stuff.
Full grown adult twink.
Yeah. I'll have to reset my brain.
Yeah.
All right. Oh, and by the way, Johannes also said Tom Holland looked too young to be a convincing Nathan Drake. Yeah, I could see that. I could see. Although, as sort of a proto Genesis movie for this franchise, I mean, they could be making these movies for
Yeah.
20 years to come. You know what I mean? So you got to start young.
Yeah, because otherwise, I think the person that most people would fan cast here would be someone like Nathan Fillion. But I think you run into the opposite problem there. Of at a certain point, he's going to look charming and dashing as I think Nathan Fillion is always going to look. He's going to look too old for Nathan Drake.
Yeah. Yep. Hedge your bets. Get a
And I
younger
think
actor.
the movie did at least try to play up the mentor protege thing and kind of the young guy outsmarting the old guy for yucks. So they at least tried that. Some of it worked, some of it didn't, but that was part of the main chemistry, right, between the two characters.
Very true.
Wahlberg's always calling him kid or whatever, and the Drake character is always poking fun at how old and kind of behind the times that Sully is.
Indeed. Well, fellas, great discussion on this film. Thank you so much for sharing your thoughts. Johannes from the Movie Mistrial podcast, thanks for chiming in with some of your thoughts here too. We're going to go ahead and shift gears and go into our next movie discussion. It is another nautical themed film in this week's episode. Death on the Nile is coming your way. Again, if you're unfamiliar with our format, we'll talk about it spoiler free for a little while, then we'll give you a heads up before we go into spoilers. Jim, Will, are you ready to get back on the Nile and head down the river?
Indeed.
Yes.
Let's solve the murder.
Will, that's a nice attempt to make a mustache like
Hercule Poirot.
Yeah.
Hercule
I've
Poirot.
unfortunately recently trimmed it, and I thought, dang it, if I'd left it long, I can wax it up and get it going when it's longer, but not today.
All right. Well, then here we go. Our discussion of Death on the Nile. All right. Jim, I know you were a big fan of the first film in this new franchise. I think out of the three of us, you were maybe the most favorable. Murder on the Orient Express. Seems fitting that you kick off our discussion of the follow-up film, Death on the Nile. Give us a brief setup, if you don't mind, and your initial thoughts. Was this a great film for you? Something that you'd maybe recommend people skip? What'd you think?
Yeah, sure. So here we have a film, second one this year, directed by Sir Kenneth Branagh. He also stars in this film as Hercule Poirot, the best detective in the world, self-proclaimed. So he's kind of, as he was in Murder on the Orient Express. This is, I think, just a second movie kind of in this. We'll call it a series because it's two films. I don't know if there will be another one or not. I haven't done the research into that. But the synopsis of this one is, while on vacation on the Nile, Hercule Poirot must investigate a murder. Go figure. Anyway, I don't want to give anything away because I think the IMDb actually gives it away. I actually like this film a lot, and the more I think about it, the more I really liked it. This film has an amazing cast, I think, just so many great characters. It's an ensemble murder mystery, kind of a Clue whodunit film, and the cast is, like I said, amazing. You've got and by the way, as I mentioned, these actors playing these characters, I am in non-spoilers, so I'm not going to tip my hat. Don't assume that just mentioning any of these characters tips my hat as to who gets murdered or who the murderer is. So we've got Armie Hammer, Gal Gadot, Annette Bening, Russell Brand is in this one. we've got who I really liked in this one. Of course, Kenneth Branagh as well. But Letitia Wright was a huge standout in this movie for me. I loved her in this. Sophie Okonedo it was great too. So I think a great cast. I think the story, I mean, it's pretty standard Agatha Christie mystery stuff. I thought the acting was really good. I thought these actors really got into their characters, which was interesting to watch. I thought the movie looked great. I thought the visuals in this movie, while there was a lot of CGI going on, apparently they built the ship. What is it called? The Karnak was the name of the ship. That's not a spoiler. And I thought the set looked beautiful. I thought the setting, even though, like I said, a lot of it was CGI, looked great. And the photography was fantastic too. Not just like beautiful landscapes and, you know, the boat on the river and everything, but like just the way the camera moved, I thought was great. And the color grading really popped for me. This movie looked really colorful, really sharp. And I just thought it was really good. I think as a mystery, I hadn't read Death on the Nile. I hadn't read the novel, so I didn't know. I didn't know who was murdered and who the murderer was. So that was great, trying to figure that out as the movie goes along. This is a big plus for me. I would recommend it. Go see it while it's still in theaters. I think it deserves. I think it would be definitely enhanced by a big screen. So yeah, check it out. I'm solidly in this movie's camp.
All right, excellent. Well, thank you so much for weighing in, Jim, with your initial thoughts. Glad to hear you enjoyed it as much as you did. How about for you, Will? How did this movie land? Was it as positive as it was for Jim, or did it leave you wanting?
So I'll start by giving a kind of a huge like disclaimer for anyone that's about to hear what I'm about to say. Murder mysteries are my shit, right? Like, you know, like ever so often you have someone who's like incredibly biased towards a very specific genre, and this is 100% the type of genre that I'm very biased towards. Like I am an easy lay for like an Agatha Christie like adaptation, right?
Had you read it, Will? Had you read?
I have. I've read this. I've read I've read Murder, and I've read
Death.
Not Poirot, but I also read, you know, like I can't say the old name for it because it was shitty and they had to rename it. And then there was one, and then there was none. It used to be called something that had a slur. That's what you do in the 20s, I guess.
Oh, that's bad.
Murder mysteries.
But anyways, it was 1930s or whatever.
Yeah, exactly. So all of that aside, like, you know, this was exactly what I wanted it to be, right? Like, I think that Kenneth Branagh has done something kind of special with these two movies, in that he's created these murder mysteries that, like, you kind of don't need to remake them, right? And the reason I say that is Agatha Christie murder mysteries are kind of straight down the middle. They have twists and turns, but I think there's an audience nowadays that craves like twists that are like really like, wicked and wild and kind of weird, like, oh, right, no, that was going to happen. And these kind of have those like crunchy twists and turns too, but also if you watch enough of them, you kind of know what the common tropes are. But the thing is, these common tropes happen because of her, right? So you can't knock the movie for being faithful to the thing that it kickstarted. And so what you want to see from these, the same way that you'd see from any of the different television or film adaptations that have happened over the years, is you want to see a bunch of big stars playing it out faithfully and with conviction. And that's what you get with both Murder and with Death. Murder on the Orient Express, Death on the Nile. I just realized Murder and Death are pretty vague ways of saying that. Kenneth Branagh does something really nice here where he captures the personal state of Poirot as he's doing his detective work, right? Like, we get to learn a little bit about his backstory. We get to learn a little bit about how he is affected personally by the case as he's exploring it. As the different twists and turns happen, you get to see how he is impacted by them, both as, again, by being a participant in what's happening, as well as being this guy who has these expectations of having to solve them. I think the cast did a pretty good job across the board. I want to give a big shout out to Russell Brand, who at the end of this movie, we had to pull up on IMDb and said, we think that's Russell
that
Brand.
was Russell
But
Brand.
this guy is playing a very subdued role. That can't be Russell. Nope, that's Russell Brand. Like, no, playing wild and crazy. You know, he's playing. He was acting. Annette Bening's really good in this. Jennifer Saunders. I think the one thing that's going to hurt this movie, and this sucks, sometimes you get a movie where you filmed it, it's in the bag, it's ready to go. As this one was, like, in 2020, this one was ready to go in 2020, and then pandemic happened and got pushed back. Two of its stars during the time that this was supposed to be released to the time that now have absolutely tanked their careers by just, you know, probably doing way too much on Twitter, between Letitia Wright and Armie Hammer, both of which are, you know, I would say are kind of albatrosses to this movie, not performance-wise, but in terms of just sort of what they bring from a marketing perspective. And that sucks. I feel like there's a lot of people that won't see this movie. I think the good news is that I don't know that necessarily hurts a third one being made, and I hope they make another one. Because with these types of stories, all you have to do is just sort of put Kenneth Branagh in a new location with a new cast of people. So at least it has that going to it. You don't have to necessarily pull all those different, like, return cast members around. But I like this a lot. Again, I'm an easy lay. I love this type of stuff. But I think if you like kind of crunchy murder mysteries, I think if you like Agatha Christie stuff, this is faithful. This is, you know, you obviously adapt stuff, but I think that, you know, at its heart, this is very faithful, and they do a good job of translating it from page to screen.
All right. Well, Will, thank you so much for letting us know your thinking on this movie. For me, I don't think I was as favorable on this film as both of you. And there's a couple reasons for that. One, murder mysteries are not my jam. They are not my favorite thing. So I know, you know, I try to devoid myself of expectations going into a movie, but, like, I know a murder mystery is going to involve a murder mystery.
Yeah.
Now, not every murder mystery is the same. Like, for instance, I really loved Mayor of Easttown, which is a big time murder mystery. But that's spread out over, you know, 10 hours of a TV show as opposed to a movie. I think with murder mysteries in films sometimes, you know, it's always like misdirect, redirect, new theory, opposite theory. It kind of gets exhausting for me over the span of a couple hours, to the point that by the end, when all is revealed and you find out who, you know, was responsible, you're just kind of like, okay, great, that's done, check. I need to pee, let's go. You know, as opposed to, like, oh man, I really and thoroughly enjoyed the meandering way that we got here to this ending. Those are the two poles of like murder mysteries where I'm concerned. And I would say that this film kind of comes in the middle for me. It's not the most exhausting murder mystery I've ever seen. It's also not the most, like, satisfying slow burn murder mystery I've ever seen. I think for what it is, it's fine. I did enjoy Brana as Hercule. I think he's an interesting character. I liked learning more about the character this time around. I kind of felt like with Murder on the Orient Express, we were just kind of, you know, Hercule is plopped in and he's reacting to what's going on. Here, I felt like we kind of got some meat and potatoes about who he is and maybe why he does some of the things he does. I definitely enjoyed the cast in this film. I feel guilty saying this, but I was turned on by all the Armie Hammer, like, hairy chest scenes, you know, and then I had to check myself and be like, are you really getting aroused on this guy? Maybe a little bit. And then I felt weird. But it's interesting that they have so much star power in this one film, and everybody has something to do. And that's one of the things that I do very much put in the positive column of this film. It doesn't feel like anybody is really wasted here. everybody has some part to play in what's going on, and it does keep you guessing, and that's a good thing. So overall, this movie is still in theaters. If you're looking for a film to go see, I would say take a chance on this one. This could be really interesting to you. But if you're not a fan of murder mysteries, if you do get tired of well, it could be this, no, it could be that, or I don't know, maybe don't see it. But just know what you're getting into. Murder mysteries are a thing. They've been around for, hundreds of years. You know what you're getting into at this point, I think. And real quick, Johannes had a comment. He said, just following Brad's comment about mystery fatigue, I felt this movie really projected the twist very early on. We can't talk about that directly without going into spoilers yet, but I wanted to ask Jim, Will, do you feel like that's true, that you knew early on in the film what was happening there?
It's tough because there's a lot of misdirect going on. I think it lays the groundwork for the central mystery, but I think it, put it this way, I suck at trying to figure out who did what to who. I just suck at solving mysteries, movie mysteries, and I can like never guess it. Like sometimes I'll guess like who the murderer is, and that'll be the person who gets killed. You know what I mean? Like I'm terrible at it. But I will say that I thought for me it kept me guessing on all fronts. I did have some kind of inkling toward like, this is interesting that this is going on, but I think the movie wanted to lead you in certain directions, and I think it did a good job in that. And to your point, Brad, it is kind of a slow movie season right now at this time of year, but I think so I think we have to celebrate the good ones that are out there, and I think this is one of them.
And I'll answer it by saying that I don't know that I can answer it because I knew the ending, right? So like,
well, that's fair.
I have a bit of I will say one of the things I liked about the film, and you hit on this, Brad. I feel like regardless of sort of like who the leading suspect was at any given time, I felt like all of the supporting players. I mean, you obviously had your kind of like your main like few players in this, Hercule being one of them, but a few of the others as well. But all of the supporting players, all of whom are suspects, because that's what you're doing. You're setting these up. You're trying to set up that parlor room scene. I think they all got an even slice of the pie in terms of like the amount of like scene work that they got. You got to see a little bit with this character, and then now he's going to go check out this character. Now he's going to talk to this character. And so I think that probably, to Jim's point, made it to where it was a little easier to go along with it and say, well, it could be this person, but this one person said something that's funny, but what about this other thing that you can just sort of like step back and say, well, let's figure this out. But again, I don't have a fair judge of that.
Yeah, it definitely makes sense.
And I hope this movie, I hope we will get another movie with Branagh as Hercule Poirot, because I think he's playing the long game with this character in terms of developing the character, right? I don't remember getting much about the character in the first movie, Murder on the Orient Express, but in this movie we did get some. We got a good amount of backstory on him, and I thought it was very poignant the way they set it up with kind of bookending scenes related to the main character, Hercule Poirot. But I really liked. That's one of the things I liked about this movie, is we got a little more invested in that character. He's not just some smart detective, right?
Mm-hmm.
If anything, I appreciate that a lot. Like, I know other people had a much better time with this show than I did, so I'm not slagging something that I hope a lot of people like, but I never could really get into the Benedict Cumberbatch Sherlock story.
Because that's too bad.
Yeah, I tried. I watched the first series, the first 3 episodes, and that character is so like robotically distant, which is fair. And
he's abrasive as well. I mean, he's abrasive.
He's abrasive, but he feels very like superhuman in the way that he approaches things. And I think that there's been this like rush of like to make characters maybe not exactly like him, but like him. You think about the Mr. Robot show. You think about shows where you have these incredibly analytical minds, but they're just missing that human connection. Cool. But I like that this is a character who his friendships guided so much of what he was doing, and his personal reaction to what was happening around him guided so much. So I thought that was refreshing. I liked the humanistic elements of Poirot.
I think, guys, it may be time to unfetter, unchain, unrestrain ourselves when it comes to the plot of this film, because it's getting harder and harder to talk about some of these things without being able to cite examples from the film. So, Jim, Will, are you ready for Spoiler Town?
Yes, absolutely.
Let's do it.
All right. Spoilers for Death on the Nile are officially fair game. If you listen past this point, you do so understanding that we're going to spoil the film and you might get spoiled. So, this is your chance to step away. No plugs this week. So, if you're listening on digital tape delay, feel free, hit pause, go see the movie, then come on back, finish the review. If you're listening live, we will see you next time, hopefully. And be sure to circle back, check out the end of the discussion after you've seen the movie. All right, fellas, where do you want to start with Death on the Nile?
I'll start by saying that I'm very glad that this story, because I didn't know the ending, wasn't one of those ones where, oh, you all conspired to kill this person. You know, like you're all
Thank
guilty.
goodness.
You're all on the
yes.
You know, it's yes, there was more than one person involved, I guess, but and maybe people could see that coming from early on, in that, you know, the Armie Hammer character marries this rich rich woman. She ends up dead, and he and his previous girlfriend had planned it the whole time. Yeah, I mean, we've seen that before and since. But back to things that I really liked about it. I liked that we got basically an origin story for when the movie opens, it opens in like wartime, like World War I Germany, I think, right? Or somewhere. And Hercule Poirot is a young soldier and he gets injured, and it's like a whole origin story for the mustache like that he wears on his face, and then like comes back around to the end, and you can see like the scar, and the mustache itself is really cool, right? It's like a double mustache. Did you notice that? Like it's got like layers. Like that is a pretty awesome mustache. But yeah, I'm watching the beginning of this movie, and I'm like, people are gonna not know what's going on at the beginning of this movie, because it's a pretty substantial scene. It's like, I don't know, 10 minutes, 15 minutes maybe of this wartime stuff, and they're like, where's the fucking Nile, and where, you know, who's getting murdered here? And not only that, but this movie is like half over or maybe more before we actually get the murder. I believe, right? It happens very, very late. And then things really start to like steamroll, which I thought was a really cool way of setting up the story. And maybe some people might have been, maybe modern day audience might have been a little impatient with it. I don't know. I could maybe sense that some people could be impatient with a movie about death on the Nile, where they're halfway into a movie and there's been no death on the Nile yet.
I like that I think for a good murder mystery, you have to set the pieces, right? I think some of them sort of rush. I think the opposite problem is worse for me when the movie like rushes into the kill, and then all of a sudden, like, we don't know who the parties involved are, so we don't know why we should care whether it was the countess or the butler or the heiress, you know, or the suitor or whatever, you know. Like, here we got to figure out a little bit about who everyone was, what their relationships were, what their hostilities were, and what grudge they had, so that at the very beginning, we already had our motives out on the table. So now it was just a matter of who actually goes through with it. And you know, I think that takes a steady hand and patience that not a lot of people are willing to like put into their movies. And I'm glad that Branagh did. You know, I feel like there's a version of this where he rushes that out of the gate, and I don't know that it's as good a product.
Yeah, I think this movie walks a fine line between jumping right into it and then not establishing the careabouts, right? Because you don't really know the characters yet. Oh, this person's suspected of being the murderer. Well, who the fuck cares? I don't know anything about them. Whatever. We're just going to get on to the next person anyway. The movie did make me care about each particular character. One thing I do have to say about murder mystery movies is I love going to see them with Jim. Even if I don't outright love the movie itself. Jim, you're adorable. So Jim will turn to me in the movie and be like, she did it. I know she did it. She's guilty. And then a minute later, she's dead with blood splattered everywhere. And Jim's like, well, I guess that theory was wrong. 20 minutes later, he did it. I know he did it. All the clues lead to him.
And then
he's
bang!
dead too. It's a lot of fun, babe. I appreciate it.
That's why that was the fun of this movie for me.
Yeah.
Good story. And I know you had read the book, and I don't know, this kind of makes me, I like this movie better than Murder on the Orient Express. Significantly better for me. I know they're both really good movies, but I don't know. Like I said, this movie makes me excited maybe for the next chapter of Hercule Poirot. Does he find love? Does he?
Well, are there?
Yeah.
Are there further books about Hercule?
So Agatha Christie wrote, I mean, this is a character who's appeared in, I mean, dozens of books. And even like, yeah. So, I mean, we've got like the ABC murders and Five Little Pigs, Cards on the Table. There's a few like kind of really big ones that are like kind of out there. And then there's also, she has another detective character in Miss Marple, who I'm wondering if if they're going to do anything with Miss Marple in these, there's a lot that you can do with the Agatha Christie, like
it's the Christie
universe,
the Christieverse, yeah,
the Christieverse. They're going to team up Avengers style and quip
in the multiverse,
other.
in the Spider-Verse.
Yes. Yeah,
right. I mean, 4 different versions of Hercule Poirot are going to show up, each with a different mustache design.
Wahlberg's going to challenge him to a mustache off.
Jim, movie. If you're kind of like itching for detective stuff to, like murder mysteries to like read, and Brad, maybe that's for you too. This might be the one that sort of like breaks the stigma of it. There's this really good book that I just finished called The 7.5 Deaths of Evelyn Hardcastle, and it's sort of set in the idea of like, there's like a woman who's going to die at 11 o'clock that night, and the guy has to solve the murder. But what the hook of it is, it's whenever he either dies or falls asleep inside of that body, he wakes up at the beginning of the morning in a different person who's involved in that body, and so he has basically 7 bodies to try to solve this one murder on, and so you get to see like the same thing from a ton of different angles. It's really really cool, and also, but it also still has some of those crunchy like, I bet it was so and so. No, I bet it was so and so. But highly recommended.
Does it still have the mustache?
There is no mustache. There's no Poirot. This is a much more recent author doing it. So it's sort of like an adaptation of the stuff Agatha Christie did before, But
I see.
I would recommend it as like a, if you're a murder mystery fan that wants something that's not, from like the 20s or 30s.
Yeah.
There you go.
Yeah. I would check it out. And as far as this movie goes, like, I was kind of surprised at the end that the body count was so high.
Yeah.
I think by the end of the movie, like 5 people were dead.
All right, let's go through them. So we had Gal Gadot's character. She died.
Right.
Ygritte from Game of Thrones died.
Yep. And
then we had...
Well, the 2 killers died.
The 2 killers, but yes, they did. They
so that's 4.
She shot, and then
there was one other one.
But there was Buck.
Russell Brand died, right?
Oh, Book.
No,
Book.
Not Russell Brand. Russell Brand survived.
What's his name's lover? Yeah. That was sad too, right? It was. Oh, was it Annette Bening's son?
Annette Benning's son. The one from the very beginning, when the green coat on the flying the kite.
That was sad. That was sad for Annette Benning's character, right? It was. Yeah. Again, I thought this movie had just enough like emotional connection to me, both through the Hercule Poirot character and things like the Book character and his mother, right? The Annette Bening character. I think that's kind of an angle that sometimes you don't get in these murder mysteries because they're too focused on the actual murder and solving the murder and the whodunit stuff that you don't get. You don't feel the emotions of the people involved. And I thought this movie at least tried to do that and did so successfully in some spots.
Even as everyone was getting off of the boat at the end, the survivors, like that, you got to see all of their different emotional states, some of which were grieving over people they lost. Some of them were like the Russell Brand character when he got off. He actually had some closure over this like flame that he had held for the Gal Gadot character that now he was finally able to I don't have to follow her around like a puppy anymore. I can go off and actually start living my life. So I like that we we had all of these little mini story arcs that all got closure.
Shittiest vacation ever, right?
Shittiest vacation.
Check
0
out
out of 5 stars.
Check out the TripAdvisor score for the Karnak. I'm just saying. Those reviews, they're brutal.
Looks pretty, but ooh. Wow.
Oh boy. All right, fellas. Well, thank you for yet another great discussion on Death on the Nile. Seems like you guys were more positive than I was, but I was still kind of positive,
Yeah.
Overall, a pretty decent film, I'd say. I really appreciate that we had an opportunity. Yes, Jim.
Hey, Kenneth Branagh does not put out shit. Oh, wait a minute. What was that movie he put out last year or 2 years ago?
Oh, are you talking about Artemis Very, Very Foul?
Artemis Fowl. That's right. Well, forget I said that then.
I was like, where are you going with that? Because that is not true. Fellas, between now and next week, where can folks chat with you if they want to talk movies? Jim, go.
You can find me on my Twitter account at JJP Out West. JJP are my initials, and that's where I like to, talk about movies, get in arguments with actors, all kinds of stuff like that. I won't get into that story, but that was bad. Anyway, Twitter can be a great platform to catch me and talk about movies. You can also find me on my Facebook page, Jim Pugliafico, my name, which is right here.
All right, excellent. Thanks so much, Will. How about for you?
Sorry, I'm on Twitter trying to find out who Jim got into a fight.
Not exactly.
No.
I'll tell you later.
I'll deal with that later.
We'll take it offline.
Yeah, I'll tell you later.
You can find me in a couple of the obvious places. Hit me up on Twitter, Instagram. I'm at Whatever Cove there. It's on the screen right beneath my chin. You can find me on Facebook. Look for William Lindis. Just send me a message first so I know who you are. Find me on Letterboxd to do the same thing. Just look for William Lindis. Follow me. I'll follow you back. And find me on TikTok. I'm picking up steam and doing the memes over there. I'm at The Movie Bear.
All right. Excellent. And you can find me on Facebook. Just search for Brad Harris. I'm the one that likely has a lot of Bear Chub Chaser friends in common with you. You can also find me on Letterboxd and Twitter at iBradPro. It's been a pleasure. Thanks for hanging out with us this week, everybody. And again, very, very much looking forward to the Movie Bears Podcast Awards, which are coming up soon. We're going to be putting out some information on our superlatives, maybe get some votes from you, our audience, as we get closer to that show. So keep an eye on Facebook and Twitter. You don't want to miss out. Thanks so much for joining us, everybody. We will see you all next time. Goodbye.
Bye.
Bye-bye.